All right, so second item on the agenda is acceptance of the agenda. Any anybody want to offer any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the 31st, 7th. Any changes to the minutes?
Good.
Good.
Hearing none, ask for approval of the minutes. All in favor?
Here, I didn't I can't.
Ask for
I
approval.
abstain.
Okay, we've been entertaining a public comment period. I don't think we have anybody online, do we?
Nobody from the public online. I do just want to reflect for the record that Laura Mitchell did join us online.
Okay, she is online.
Yes.
All right, then on to the new business. We're gonna be discussing wrong thing. We're gonna be doing review and feedback of the online survey of the public engagement website. So
Yes. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is going to be new to you. I couldn't figure out how to send you a link to the project website without actually making it public for everyone, and I didn't want to change it until I had you guys approve it. So just want to give you a brief sort of run through of the project website. We're using a third-party vendor called Social Pinpoint, which I've used in other communities. And the reason that I like to use them is because they have a lot of built-in public engagement apps, I guess I would say, within the project website. So what I've done is they created sort of the back end of the website and I've populated it with our information. The homepage is what you would see here. And then there's some information about the comprehensive plan process, a link to get involved, which is also up in the tabs. And then the same timeline that we had put in the Orono Observer back in May when we first sort of started our process. And that can be updated as we sort of check things off, just so that folks are aware of what we're intending to do. But the actual great thing about the website is its built-in features. So I sent you what would essentially be the hard copy version of the survey. My intention is to have hard copies available with a brief cover letter for those who need it, both here at the town office, but then also over at the library. And if you have any ideas for other places where it might be beneficial, happy to do that. We are also working with our communications person to get flyers that we can post around town with a QR code link so that folks can do it that way if they prefer. But then finally, we'll have this project webpage linked from our Town of Orono website, and we'll have a shortened bit.ly link, bit.ly link, so that it's quick and easy for folks to type it in. And that will link them directly to this page, which is where the online survey is currently being housed and where in the future we can house any other sort of built-in apps. One of the ones that we've specifically called out in my scope of work is to do an interactive map when we get more towards future land use conversations so that people can actually talk about where they want things to be located and give some feedback that's more location specific. Right now, I'm included a memo in the meeting packet that sort of summarizes what I'm intending for all of our public engagement events. And just for your benefit, we're really starting public engagement just now. Yeah. We've had some articles in the Orono Observer, and of course we've had our comp plan committee page with our agendas posted publicly. This is really the meat and potatoes of the planning process, I should say. So yeah, you've seen the hard copy version of the survey. What I have here on this webpage is essentially that hard copy transposed to be a little bit more friendly for digital users. It should mimic the hard copy that you received. So if there are questions or comments about any of the questions that we're asking or why we're asking those things, I do want to know those. But in general, this is really to get like first blush broad feedback from the community. We want to understand both community priorities and then folks' general experience of the built environment. And by that, I mean not only buildings, walking down Main Street, but also transportation issues and access to natural resources and recreation opportunities. And then I also have a couple of questions in there just about sort of people's experience with public services in Orono. So that would be like the town office and our municipal departments. How we'll use this feedback from the survey is as we're moving into the next meetings, everything will sort of build on itself. So this is, again, broad brush general feedback. We will extrapolate the priorities that folks communicate through this survey to come up with our top 4 topic areas for those more in-depth meetings that will be held in November and December. Those are sort of the top 4 priorities of respondents to the survey and any tabling work that we've done since then. And then also from the in-person comprehensive plan workshop. So there will be a lot of different ways for folks to give feedback on their general priorities. And then those topic area meetings will be deep dives into the data and facilitated activities. They're meant to be a little bit more fun, but to actually get some more specific usable feedback about the top 4 priority areas that we can use in developing policy later on. So that is just what I wanted to give as an overview. If you have specific questions about the online survey, happy to take those at this point, or edits or questions. Yeah, happy to take those.
Isabel, do you anticipate that 4 questions or 4 primary topics will be sufficient to address all of the issues that we expect to hear about? I mean, it's fine. I understand diving deep, but I don't want to limit ourselves if there's room for flexibility there.
So the topic area meetings, I think is what you're asking about, sort of the top 4 priorities for
Correct.
the meetings, was built into the scope that was approved by the council. In general, 4 has been more than sufficient in other communities. I think what you'll end up finding is you sort of hear, 2 or 3 big things that really warrant additional conversation and the sharing of data. That is not to minimize the other chapters. There are 12 chapters that are addressed within the plan that the state asks us to address, with associated goals, objectives, and action strategies alongside those, that we can still do policy making about and we can still spend some time on in other meetings. It just sort of means that, we'll have more focused priority conversations. And in the past, it has been sufficient. I don't know the level of flexibility in terms of like budget with the scope, but if it did come to that, like we were really seeing that we needed 5 or 6 meetings, we could have that conversation with town staff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the deep dives. It just I don't want to lose, other important issues. So, if we focus on those 4 primary topics, I just want to make sure we're not limited.
I think it's worthwhile pointing out here that we're talking about 4 priority areas and not 4 issues.
Yeah.
A priority area such as housing is going to overlap a lot of other areas like,
Yep.
Green space and other kinds of issues like that. So I think if you have 4 areas, that's going to encompass a great many of all the issues that the public's going to bring up. So it's not that we're only going to look at 4 issues. I think it's going to end up with a broader scope than that would appear at first.
That was my hope.
Yeah, okay, well, so I just rode my bike here, so I'm a little freshly agitated by traffic. It's not pleasant to ride along Main Street on a bike, and if you're walking, there's space on the sidewalk, but it's also not pleasant. I mean, if anyone walks around here or bikes, it's just a lot of traffic. It's a couple feet away from you. So when I as a user, if I go to this website, the first thing I'm gonna see is this tranquil view of Webster Park. And then this nice little flowery thing beside the community center. And I guess what I would propose is let's kind of agitate people. But the whole point of this is we want them to like, kind of like, you know, think deep, like what is it that they want to change in this neighborhood? Let's put a picture up there that shows like some of the frustrations that I just encountered and maybe that would prompt other people to think about, yeah, this is some of the things that I want to see change in Orono via this comp plan and the future.
Yeah.
So I don't know how other people feel about that. I have a list of other things I want to mention, but that's like kind of the big thing that's vibing through me at the moment.
Sparking it's almost like what you're talking about is sparking an emotion
Yeah, right.
versus like thinking about something like it's like the image should lead people to feel something versus.
Yeah, this is almost like drugging them before they do the
I don't know if we want
responses.
to feel anger there. That's my point.
Well, but why not? I mean, if we want people to like actually like feel that. I guess maybe there's an in between.
Yeah.
But Webster Park, like tranquility there is doing the opposite.
Is that what you're
maybe.
feeling right now?
No. I left that neighborhood and to get here it changes your whole like your whole mindset.
Well, I appreciate what you just raised, which is like sparking an emotion in general and maybe not overly prescribing what they ought to feel beforehand, whether it be anger or anything else. But I think definitely what we want is for people to bring what they really feel about the town and not be too stuck in their head about certain ideas either.
Yeah, we could put, maybe there's a hybrid image, a collage.
I was thinking maybe somewhere in between, right? Like people like faces and that makes you think of the faces in your community and you might even see somebody you know in one of these photos, right? If we can find pictures of people engaging with their community, you're starting to think about how you fit into it without making people angry with traffic. Right? Like there's maybe a middle line there, right? Cause I see gardens and I think about my garden and how I need to weed, you know, but like making people think about their community and their place in it might be a good, you know, way to get to that point. I don't know. Middle ground.
There is a way on the website to do like a sliding or rotating thing of pictures. So I think I can take all of the ideas that you're giving if that's what people are interested in and
Add
kind
a
of.
red
blend it.
view.
But go outside and snap your picture. 8:30 in the morning.
We do have, just to your point, it made me think, I was going through photos that we just have like at the town office and that we use for communications. And there's an aerial image of downtown and it's just a parking lot from the aerial. It's really interesting. So that could be a good one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, I don't want to set the notion that I want everyone to be upset, but I do want them to be thinking purposefully when they enter the survey.
I'm not, if there's gonna be like a carousel of images, one option might be to take like to pull the collection of words from, you know, one of the documents that we've generated that has sort of that 10,000-foot view and generate a word cloud that has some of the key words that are attached to some of the, you know, topics that we've discussed so that folks have a sense of like, when I'm engaging this, here are some of the things that I would be thinking about. Just because I think that it is, like, if you were to ask me to do a survey about, you know, a comp plan, I feel like I would have the impression that that's for people who think about things that are different than the things that I think about as a, you know, resident of this community, when the reality is like, over the course of these conversations, obviously I've learned that, holy cow, like the conversations here have such an impact on, you know, how the life of my family unfolds. And I feel a lot of things about that stuff. Translating that to feedback on a survey, I feel like that's a tricky matter.
Usually while I'm on the subject of public engagement, this is a little bit off topic, but usually one of the first things we do at our community open house, which will be our first event in early October, is go through and have people write in what they love about Orono and want to keep as is, and then what they would change if they could, and it generates a word cloud with their responses from the audience. Yeah, so I think it's Mentimeter is the one. So it kind of generates it from them live right there. And that can be really helpful just for starting the visioning conversation. So yes, to both things.
I really like the word cloud idea because that gets to Eric's point. That everybody that has any kind of an issue, if they see their word in the cloud, they're gonna be engaged, whereas if they're looking at a picture of Webster Park, everybody's Webster. So
Happy pill.
Yeah,
the word cloud has the opportunity to engage.
yeah, I just wanted to, you touched on some of that, Isabel, but how do you envision like the structure of that meeting? You know, how is it gonna be set up? Obviously you mentioned a whiteboard or something to allow people to come write ideas, but how did you figure that meeting will go? I'm just
So I
curious.
can at least speak to the community open house one right now because I'm
Yep.
actively in the midst of planning that. So usually what I would like to do is open with the word cloud generator just to start the conversation. Again, asking people what they love and want to keep and then what they would change if they could. Start to get some good conversation that way. But ultimately, the purpose of the open house meeting is to introduce people to the concept of a comprehensive plan and why it's important to them and why they should care about it. And how it will end up impacting the community for the next, 10 to 15 years. And then we will go into sharing some of the data on posters around the room. So I won't get into a whole presentation about that, but people can walk around as they please and look at some of the data that we have been discussing throughout this process. And then we'll also have posters where they can give more specific feedback about any issues and opportunities as they see them. Again, it tends to be fairly broad at this point because we are just sort of introducing people. But I like to get the sort of broad brush feedback so that we can develop our top priorities and then dive deeper later on.
Our timeline for finalizing the online survey.
So the online survey, the schedule had it going live on Monday. If you have questions or comments, I would like to have those now, but if you're also feeling like that's too quick of a time frame, we can have a conversation about potentially pushing out that date.
Well, when I look at a survey, finding a survey, I always ask myself every time I'm creating an item for the survey question, what is it that I want to learn from that particular question in isolation? And just briefly going through them, the housing areas, there were a couple of items there that trying to figure, what are we going to learn from that item? And
Do you mean the neighborhood question?
that,
Do you mean the neighborhood, like what neighborhood are you in, or the other housing one, like
no,
what,
no,
are you
there's-
satisfied with
I
the?
think, what's important
Yeah,
is housing and issues important to you? There were 4 or 5 questions that are about housing.
Are you talking more about the section where it talks about like describing the amount of residential, commercial development and then any major housing issues? Or are you talking more about?
Why don't I give you a call tomorrow? I'm not
Okay.
gonna be able to find it here. Oh, here's the one about multifamily homes and apartments. There's 2 items there. Multifamily homes and apartments as opposed to single family homes. And what are we gonna learn from that?
Yeah, so that one, okay, so I'm glad that you brought up that one.
That was the
specifically.
one in particular that struck me.
So that one actually obviously we've been having sort of a housing crisis across the state since pre-COVID, 2019, 2018, yeah. This one ends up being a pretty important question that I like to ask because it starts to get at what people are actually feeling. So many of us aren't searching for a new apartment on a yearly basis or searching for a new home on a yearly basis. But I am curious what people are feeling about, what they're hearing generally. So it tends to gauge people's comfort level with new development, without asking them specifically, do you want new development in your neighborhood? If that makes sense.
Around this, I think you said Laura is with us, so maybe she could speak for herself, but Laura Mitchell sent an email in response, I think, earlier today, about maybe adding a question about housing and asking where people would like it to go or what issues they would prioritize and where it should go. She also says, I know there were zone changes recently to add density in certain areas, but our group hasn't discussed that. And layering in that aspect will be important. And then also talking about infrastructure such as sewer, water for the purpose of housing and other development as a priority. I'm not sure how Laura might better phrase that, but I want to make sure that was part of the conversation.
another thing to think about in this particular question is what are the demographics that we're collecting along with the survey? Because I can easily visualize that these questions are going to be very different opinions depending on who you are. If you're a temporary resident, a student, then obviously there's not enough apartments, right? But I'm afraid that most of the people that are going to engage with the comprehensive planning process are not going to be those people. And it's going to be important to be able to, cross tab these out and see what demographic is worried about single family homes. And are they homeowners?
Are you capturing this survey online only, or is there a paper document?
There will be a paper document in both the town office and the library as well.
And I saw you have one area where you're accepting comments. Are you gonna try to capture those comments to look for commonality?
In terms of like where folks live.
Yes.
Yes, so on, just so you're aware, on the, oh, it's not coming up. Because you have, so when you select that you live here, you both live and work here, and you're a student, the next question that comes up is where you live. I suggested neighborhoods as I'm aware of them on the hard copy survey, but the online version has a map that you could drop a pin of your neighborhood on, so we will get that location specific data as well.
What other demographics are we going to collect?
So we have what is their relationship, their age, gender, how many people are in their household. I think it's all on the last page. I think I'm forgetting one. Yeah.
Okay. Might want to just think about the demographics that we're collecting. Are they the right demographics to shed light on the responses that you're going to get for subject area?
I'm just gonna pull up the full list of demographics because with the online survey, it hides some things unless you say that you are a resident.
Not sure how it will be on your end, but I've seen surveys when you're on the issuing end where you can tweak out and say, delete this demographic and see what the responses were.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean by cross tabbing it out. You
Yes.
divide up all of your responses.
Try to get rid of your high end and your low end markets.
Yeah, so what's on your screen now is what we're asking in terms, and there's another page that I'll go through as well. So what's your relationship? If you select that you live here, both live and work here, or that you're a student, it ends up opening the ones that if you live in Orono, do you own or rent? If you live here, what's your residence status? So seasonal, year round. Sometimes people say, live here for 8 months of the year, or my grandparents live here, or I grew up here. And then if you live here, how long have you lived here? Because I think that will sort of change. What neighborhood you live in, and then age, gender, and how many people are in your household. So are you a family household or just single or two
Are
person?
we going to know anything about the household's engagement with the schools?
That was my question.
That's going to be a big.
So, one of the things that I hear people kind of complaining about the taxes is that, well, I don't have kids in the school, right? And so the buy-in that you have for the school kind of is directly related to whether you have kids or have had kids, or whether you see the value in having a good school in your community and kind of all of the add-on benefits that come from that. So I'd be interested to know if people had school-aged children, because that gives people kind of a different perspective on the town. And that would be one that I'd be curious about.
Or if they've had children go
yeah.
through the school system before,
Sure.
they're going to have a definite opinion about.
And this is just maybe a more Orono specific question that I need some feedback on. Do you feel that people's experience of the school system directly impacts their experience of living in the community in general?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
100%. That's the reason to live here.
That's the reason a lot of people choose to live in Orono.
That has come up in our conversations, but.
Right, and I don't know if this is if there would be room to fit this in, but for us, it would be really fascinating to have a sense of where a family's evolution is in terms of like the life of a family, whether it's I've had kids go through, the system and, graduated, I have students enrolled. Or I have young children who will be attending school in the future, or I plan to have children who will be attending school. That idea of, what the arc of family life is in the community.
So maybe the question you ask is like, what is your relationship with the Orono school system? Right? And maybe given other like, I don't know, if somebody opts out of the school system, that's also an important thing to know, right? They have a relationship with it, but it's maybe not good.
The idea of homeschooling students is something that is at an all-time high in other parts of the state. And it is something that we have not experienced in this community at the rate that, even close to the rate that it's happening in other parts of the state. So that is, and we are having students who, like this spring, or this summer and fall in particular, have had students who had been homeschooled in other parts of the state who have moved to Orono and now are re-enrolling in schools in this district versus districts from which they have moved.
And like on other.
You might wanna have one that's like, I don't have a relationship with this.
Relationship seems a little bit opens a whole.
That's the idea, right? So like, do you have kids in school? Do you not have kids in school, but you have kids that you've opted out, right? The relationship leaves it open.
Because.
Yeah, I heard the age conversation. I have kids in school. That doesn't necessarily like speak to my relationship with the school.
You could
And I
say
think other
enrollment
people
status.
feel that way too. Enrollment status.
Like,
Love
what
it.
is your enrollment status with RSU 26 or Orono schools?
And then we do ask a question when we're talking about public services more broadly up top, like what your general feelings are. So lacking, severely lacking, great, yeah,
About the school?
yes.
That'll be funny.
Do you want more comments now?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so if we scroll back up. There was a question about what do you feel, this is like just the ranking, good and bad, about the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. I don't remember what page it was on, it was one of the earlier sections.
It's on the first page of the survey itself, which is page 9 of the PDF.
So I think I would separate those.
Okay.
So make 2 questions out of it. And I think we also need to distinguish whether we're talking about bicycle and pedestrian. Well, pedestrian denotes like, okay, we're on like a paved sidewalk or some sort of municipal surface. But biking is like, well, are we talking about the single track trails? Are we talking about being able to ride to the school? So I think this question is targeting like, how do people feel about traveling on a bike or through walking? So I would put something to distinguish it so that we're not talking about recreational use. And then separate pedestrian and bicycles. I would say the sidewalk structure in Orono is very good. The bicycle infrastructure is not that great.
But I think we get into that question more.
Right, there's a
Quality.
spot
Yeah.
part further down, right? And if you want to go there now, I would, in that section, it says on and off-road. And again, we're gonna be capturing like, oh, I'm a mountain biker, like I drive everywhere, but I love mountain biking here. The off-road is great, there's like miles and miles of single track, but that, again, like, we're blending, and to Jeff's point, like, what are we going after here?
Yeah, this is not, this section should be about transportation, and I personally wouldn't view mountain biking as an activity, that's a recreation, that's not
Right, but
necessarily.
it says off-road, so like, I think we need to do something in there to separate it. Maybe municipal paved or maintained trails and municipal infrastructure. I don't know. I wouldn't even use the word trail, I guess. I think too many people are gonna immediately think of a dirt, something in the forest.
Maybe the off-road could just go in the outdoor recreational amenities section. You have page 2, I believe.
Sorry. just
You
wanna-
already have that actually there, so.
I just want to clarify, so with terms of bicycle facilities, we're thinking that typically when you're traveling in terms of bicycle facilities, you're utilizing like on-road. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe you wanna say like bicycle facilities for like commuting. Or
Yeah,
something
because
like
that's what
that.
we addressed last time is alternative forms of transportation, whether it's pedestrian, travel or transport or bicycle transport.
I don't wanna get too
That's-
specific. It's either all we're trying to identify here is what's your opinion of the status of bicycle facilities?
But there's definitely like a recreation, and then there's this aspect that facilitates people getting from A to B
Yeah,
for a
and I
commute.
would agree, we should distinguish those in the survey, but not worry so much about the other finer details of bicycling in the community, because if everybody thinks bicycling is inadequate, then it's gonna be one of the issues in our 4 areas that we're gonna talk about and developed there, so.
Obviously, a paper one, you can jump all over and answer what you want. Online, are you required to keep going? Or
Yes.
Can you just skip and say, I'm done?
So the vast majority of well, I'm not gonna say the vast majority. Many of the initial questions, so essentially this first page and then the demographic questions are specifically required. You can't submit until you answer them. The ones in the middle, so talking more about natural resources, residential and commercial development, the built environment, transportation system, and public facilities are currently optional. If you don't have an opinion, you don't necessarily have to answer. So, yeah.
So in that case, no answer is going to be equivalent to not important.
Yes.
That's the way we would interpret it.
Well, we would see it that they skipped the question, but we would likely interpret it as not important.
How are we gonna drive people to the survey, Isabel, to maximize participation?
Yeah, so I mentioned at the outset, we're currently working on developing flyers that we're going to post around town. Pete, our communications person, has also talked with me about doing like social media posts as well. And I'm hoping that we might be able to get something in like a school email blast too, just so that we can get as many folks as possible from there. That has worked really well for me in other communities. That tends to be how parents engage with the town to an extent, and social media.
About the
hard
university.
flyers. So we were talking about this in management. I had a meeting with management today talking about this. In general, I'm currently planning to do some tabling at the university, like during lunchtime, to try to capture people and get them to fill out the survey. We as is typical for all of our notifications, like agenda posting and things like that, also post things at Memorial Union. So we would post the flyer there as well. And if anyone has any specific ideas about doing some sort of email blast or a contact, that would be awesome. I don't know if there is one, but
Would it be too expensive to put those little tent things you put on tables in restaurants and it has a little QR code that you just scan while you're sitting waiting for your food to come?
I have not looked at that.
Like a Woodman's and a Pat's and all this.
So we are planning to do tabling at local businesses as part of, or I guess I should say I am planning to do tabling as well. So I will be there in person on some nights, but I can look into the price and talk to town staff about what that might look like.
Yeah, little tents that they just sit on a table, just like they're run
Yeah.
pages for ordering menus.
Yeah.
And then you just take your phone and take a picture of that QR code and the survey will pop up.
That would be awesome. If
Or
as long
just on
as folks are
bulletin, excuse me, just on bulletin boards, the QR
Or
code, yeah.
anywhere. No, yeah, you're welcome.
So we have access to the flyers and we can easily print those. I just don't know about the expense of printing but I can check it on that.
Yeah.
What is the survey window?
Let me take a peek. So my hope was to get it up on Monday, the 9th, and let it run through the end of October, October 24th. So then when we have our community open houses, we can direct people to fill that out as well.
What about trunk or treat as a time to have something, some information? I don't know if folks are familiar, but there's, feels like the whole town comes out. I don't know if it would be on cards we would hand out or if, because obviously people aren't gonna be doing that while they're taking their kids trick or treating, but.
Cards would be awesome, and that we should have the ability to print, even if it's just on paper, that we can hand out. But I can check in on that.
Handy.
Yeah.
How many times can an individual submit a survey? And how do you
So,
control for that?
in terms of the website, we could make people create an account on the website and submit. We can see, I don't know if I should admit this on camera, but we can see folks' IP addresses. That doesn't mean that, if they have 5 or 6 people in their houses, they might all want to fill it out. But we can see IP addresses. I will say this comes up every time I do a comp plan and has never been a major issue of somebody skewing the results. But we can see IP addresses in the background.
Would Lori Sidelko be able to get us a contact at the university, maybe to expand exposure over there? Because I just think a table or something like that, a lunchtime table, probably limited contact with people. So I'm just wondering whether we had access to any wider distribution over there.
She's not in the room. She couldn't make it tonight, but I will
Correct.
follow up.
That's what I was thinking.
I can also say, all the different counselors, we all have like extensive email lists and contact lists from our various times that we've campaigned and stuff. And many counselors have already expressed their interest and willingness to spread this out to their various lists too around town. So hopefully that can be helpful.
The neighborhood list, Rob? Out there.
Yeah, different counselors have our list from when we've campaigned and et cetera, different community engagement things. I mean, I know Dan Demerit, for example, has put a lot of work into this, building a very wide list of community members from many different neighborhoods. And there has been interest from the council. When I was updating them about our most recent work, the meeting last month, in trying to make sure that there was some targeting of different neighborhoods. And they were talking about that particularly around the different community meetings where I said it likely wouldn't fit into the plan that you developed around topic areas, which is also what the council already agreed to with our, with your scope of work. People were fine with that, but I think we discussed as a council figuring out how we can best help make sure that if we're seeing like not a lot of engagement from one part of the community, whether we could do some targeted work to, if not canvas, do some sort of work to make sure that we're getting some more responses from them. Say if the basin doesn't give us a lot, like we want to make sure that their perspective is represented.
Is there any interest, or should we be interested in the opinions of people who are property owners or business owners but are not residents?
So I can give you my personal thoughts and feelings.
Love that.
Yes, because regardless, people who own property, but it's rental property are still making money, and from Orono being a desirable place to live. So we asked a demographic question that was do you just work here? Do you live and work here? I don't know if you want me to get specific about, do you own property here? But my short answer is yes, we do care. And I also often get the question, why should we care about the university community that's sort of a transient population? Even if those specific individuals aren't here in 10 years, they are representing an interest group that will continue to be here for the foreseeable future. So in general, yes, the short answer is we do care about business owners and property owners.
Are we going to be able to?
You do have questions that distinguish, whether or not somebody lives here and they're a business owner and such. We'll be able to see that. Yeah.
Well, there's the neighborhood question should tell us whether they're, they live here.
Sure.
But I think it is important to collect the opinions and feelings of people who own property or have businesses here but are not residents. And we want to be able to distinguish them as a group and what is their opinion of things.
Yeah, I think we have one of the demographic questions,
We
is,
can get that.
yes, I work here or other, so I would say either one of those would fit for them.
I had a few more points. A couple questions on page 2. You mentioned lakes and ponds, and like my immediate thought was like, what ponds? Is this about Pushaw Lake? Like mud, like we're talking about little frog ponds? That might just confuse the question. I'm not sure that should be in there.
Yeah, I thought about this today as well, and I ended up omitting it from the first one, but then realized maybe we should talk about it. I would say probably just lakes,
Pushaw Lake?
Pushaw Lake.
Maybe just write Pushaw Lake.
Okay.
What question is this?
The 2 top ones on page 2.
You could say like waterways, and that way people can insert their own waterway. Right, because we do have a pretty prominent river
Yeah.
in town, right? Like water is an important resource here, so, you know, and there's areas along the river too, so
And
maybe
there's
waterways.
sorry, okay, well, ponds in off Taylor Road that don't have water access.
Yeah, I know which, at least one that you're talking about that used to be privately owned, and now maybe you can shed some light on this. The one that used to be like more of a fire pond or a bait pond, I think, off Taylor Road. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's,
Yeah, you're talking about Caribou Bog Conservation Area.
Yeah, Taylor Road, it is, that's the same thing.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That's one of the ponds, but it's almost,
There's several
This-
ponds there.
this-
Yeah.
There's 2 out there,
Yeah.
at least 2.
there's
Well,
caribou.
There's
and
7 out there.
beaver, maybe.
So general waterways, are we?
Just
okay with
waterways,
that?
maybe, yeah.
Okay.
And then the second question, I would just add multi-use trails as an option that people could respond with.
Sorry, what was
The
that?
same, the next question down, it also says lakes and ponds, so maybe change that too. But then in the choice for people to respond with, I would add multi-use trails. And then I think it's the same page. Yeah, we're talking about outdoor recreational amenities. It talks about ATV and snowmobile. And now suddenly I'm wondering like, are we talking about a regional access to this stuff? Because there are no snowmobile ATV trails in Orono.
There was a snowmobile trail,
But
but they haven't been,
Right.
hasn't been
Okay.
used in.
So omit,
I think I would
Yeah.
agree with it, yeah.
okay, no longer accessible or
Well,
maintained.
I guess I'm confused. It's which of the following is most important to you? And if we don't have it, but it's important to people, why wouldn't we have it as an option?
Then we're changing the way that I read the question and maybe what we're looking for. What are we hoping to gather from that question? Is this a wish list or is this what people appreciate of what is currently accessible?
I read it as being kind of both, like what do people want to see? And maybe that includes things that they want to see preserved or expanded, and also things that we don't have that maybe they think we want in town.
I read it the way Rob did.
Okay,
So
maybe this is warrants a rewording slightly to, you
Yeah,
know, what is your wish list items? Something, I don't know,
well,
something.
they do have an outdoor. one.
Where you say, click all that apply.
Yeah,
Should we separate tennis and pickleball courts?
Yes.
well, well, as a tennis player, I would say yes.
So they're different and it's, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Judd.
They're quite different.
I want a question about bocce ball courts. Oh, we're getting too specific.
I think we've got the other.
All right, so now if we go to page 4.
Yeah.
It talks about regional transportation and it says railway. So again, I guess same question. Are we thinking that, are we asking people, do they want a railway stop in Orono? Or is this a wish list? Or are we talking about regional, there is no regional railway?
No.
So what are we?
So
actually
I would
calling
say
it?
if it matters to me, I'm saying severely lacking.
Yeah.
If it doesn't matter to me, I'm saying not important to me.
But that means also now we're saying, well, is the airport severely lacking because they can't get there with ease? Or is it because there's no railroad? That's, everyone's gonna, if everyone is accurately answering that, every single person should write severely lacking.
Or not importantly.
We're on
Or
page
that, right.
4.
Well, and
There's only
that's a
two-
good way to
there's
judge like how important is like light rail service to people in this community, right? Like, I know Baldacci's, this is his like baby in the Senate, and this is what he wants to do is get rail all the way up to Bangor.
Then maybe it
right,
should be
so-
like bus and airport, and then another question for railway. Cause the Concord Coach is a super awesome transportation amenity that isn't on there. I would say it's the best one that we have access to.
I guess I don't even understand the purpose of the question, quite honestly, like. Maybe I'm under prioritizing this as an issue, but we're not gonna like add an airport in Orono, like. Or what, like, what are we, what's the end goal of this question?
So this one's fairly broad, because you're right, like, we're not gonna be able to build an airport, but what we could do is if it becomes a severely lacking for most people, like access in general, what we could do is have a more thorough conversation about what would improve your access. So is that like a direct bus line to the airport for students? Is that, you know, something along those lines, like more direct investment?
And when I worked at EMDC, we did like a community survey and like one of the, I think it was number 2 or 3, like best things about living in the area was access to that airport. Right, like that's a thing that people appreciate about this community. You can go walk on a plane in 5 minutes and get through security, like that's pretty cool. And maybe you can't get everywhere, but you can get to New York, then you can get anywhere, right? So like, I do think people see that as a good resource in the area. So if they do have a hard time accessing it, that might really actually be important.
And I think this question, both around rail and airport, could, still have help set priority. If we understand like, oh, a ton of community actually really does want rail, for council and, you know, just future town government to be thinking about what we're investing in is and what we're pushing for. You know, if the town wants to advocate at the state level for railway or
I
something.
mean, part of the comprehensive plan is saying, where do we wanna go?
Yeah.
Right, and if something like that is really important to the town, you know, we might wanna focus our policy making around how do we get there?
Yeah, so in the transportation chapter, VAX used to advocate for rail to come to this region, and they're sort of our regional transportation planning agency and our MPO. And they no longer are advocating. Their policy committee voted not to continue advocating. So if that was something we wanted to change or continue advocating for, that would be a good goal of this plan in the future, is get VAX to continue advocating for that.
I would propose that we just eliminate the parenthetical altogether and just let it stand as regional transportation. Everybody's gonna have a different idea about what that is. It's gonna be Concord bus lines for one person, that's gonna be airport for somebody else. The key factor here is what is your access to those transportation?
Are you adding a comment?
Well, I don't know, what about just removing the parenthetical?
Yeah, maybe each one is, but if each of these sets of questions is within a section of the survey, maybe there could just be an open field. Is that what you were about to say, something like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they're visually gonna see this, but for everything that's on page 4, like that's one question, right?
Yeah, so this is how it looks on the digital one.
Okay, so then maybe at the bottom, you could just put like, do you have anything specific or specific comments about any of these areas? And that's where they could be like, well, I love access to the airport, but
You can't drive by ATV there.
ATV trail.
I wonder whether or not I agree, you Jeff, on removing the railway airports part of it. I think there are other bits of this that are specific. About public transit, bicycles, access to highways. I wonder if it is helpful information for us to know specifically that they have certain feelings or don't about railway or airports. And maybe there is something here about also access to, I guess, bus outside of our, community connector system. Maybe that's to be included there. I don't know. But I would worry that we'd actually lose some helpful information that doesn't take up too much space if we get rid of the railway and airport specificity.
I might propose just separating it into 3, so rail, Concord coach bus, or yeah, probably Concord coach bus and then airport. Just get the specific feedback we're actually looking for.
Should mention Concord.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe there's some better way to describe.
Just regional
Right,
bus
people
system.
think of, so.
Oh.
None of us are old enough to know that there used to be a
Ground
ground transportation all the way.
Yeah,
That's where it break down.
The way it is right now, Isabel, do you have an idea of how long? Is there, should we worry about like survey fatigue?
Yes.
Yes, I'm trying to keep it around 10 minutes.
That's why I just referred to, can you just skip way past stuff because you're just tired of doing the survey?
So the comment thing that I was suggesting, maybe it's like if lacking or severely lacking, like please provide. Please explain. Because like the ability of roadways and intersections to handle traffic it varies a great deal around town. And so knowing like where people have an issue is potentially more helpful than just knowing that's an overall concern.
We do have some of that data from previous workshops that we've done with large community gatherings in this room. So it would be like new and fresh information, but we have specifically asked the community to come and give us data about which specific intersections they've had issues with and et cetera.
No, okay, not just on Main Street. I thought that was
No, that was-
the Main Street. Oh, okay.
This was like 5 years ago now. It's part of like the DOT Bicycle Coalition of Maine initiative that they did with Orono. And it was
It looks like it should
townwide,
be updated though, right? At this point, if it was,
probably has changed.
if that's a 10-year plan and it was 5 years old, yeah.
Is that something that'll come up? Cause I imagine transportation will be one of our core areas, right? Housing and transportation are like the things that people really talk about. I imagine that those are things that'll come up. Can we do a deep dive at that point when we're, right? And maybe send out a transportation specific survey if that ends up being one of our core areas.
Yeah, and I mean, not even like a full survey like this, but there's an ability to do just like quick question and answer on the website. So like 1 or 2 questions. So if we wanted to get more specific information about any of our priorities, including transportation, we could do that.
In reference to survey fatigue, you said you can kind of know who's doing the survey,
We can track IP addresses, yeah.
just like shoppers do. If you put something in your shopping cart and leave it there, a day or 2 later, they might come back and say, would you like to finish your shopping? You could do that with the survey. If they don't finish it, you could send them back a little portion, say, would you like to finish the survey today? You know,
I don't know if it has the ability to do that quite as easily.
unless they created an account, like you talked.
Well,
about.
right, so we could require everyone to complete an account. I would,
It's gonna turn
yeah,
people
I
off.
would not
And
recommend
they
doing
would say,
that.
no, I'm not giving up that.
Yeah.
You asked me to create another password. No.
Same, yeah, I mean, that is the best way to track it, but unfortunately, it ends up leading to far less results to the survey. We're at 7 o'clock right now, and I only have one more thing, so.
So really quick then, page 7. I don't know that we actually talked about this the way I think I need to, but it's just neighborhoods, but I don't know, it's just, I feel like it's leaving out a lot of neighborhoods.
I would love to
I don't
discuss
even
this
know what,
further.
Lauren, what's our neighborhood?
Well, there are certain neighborhoods, but then other places don't really have a neighborhood.
Like, we have a neighborhood, but like, it's not on there. Are we a neighborhood?
Spencer
off of
Street
Forest Ave?
neighborhood.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what my actual, I mean, I guess I would maybe put like neighborhoods off Forest Ave, but I don't actually know.
You could just ask them where they live.
So,
Like, what street?
Right, I used to live in the basin.
so we could do that. I do want to note, this is just for the hard copy survey. The digital has a pin dropper that you can drop.
Right, okay.
But I was wanting to discuss this as well, just because as I was brainstorming neighborhoods, I was not sure what folks considered neighborhoods, other than Webster neighborhood and Tough End, really.
It's like Sailor Moon is like one of the larger neighborhoods.
Sailor neighborhood's not on there.
Do we think it would turn, like, push people away if we asked for their address specific? I mean, I know they're basically giving that with the pin drop on the online version.
I think it would turn folks away.
What about like nearest cross street to that where they live or something like.
Even just street you live on is usually fine. For some of the smaller streets, it might turn people off, but we can put streets you live on or prefer not to answer, and that at least gets us most of the data.
You're
I
typing
don't
that?
know where to answer this, where I live. I'm not on it.
That's what I was just saying.
Oh, other fill in the blank. Is neighborhoods off of Forest Ave, is that different than rural areas west of I-95?
Yes,
One's within I-95 and one's not. I guess, I think that's what
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
we're off for that.
Okay.
Opportunity to say not a.
Yeah, but then what is,
So
but
this
that's
one
off Forest Ave, the
Yeah.
rural areas west of I-95, like,
Well-
who knows where west of I-95?
Bennett Road is not there, street, yeah.
Digital compass now.
Where I live anymore. There's also like people who live around the lake too, like that's a community.
And that would be like under this rural
West of-
areas.
Yeah,
but-
yeah.
That's, living along the shore of Cushing is different from living in rural.
Right, then like outer forest and living on Pushar, like two different neighborhoods.
So
What is the purpose of this demographic information?
So this one is because we're asking some location specific information, like what do you wish was a 10-minute walk from your house, and some of the other location specific ones. This one is important just so that when we're doing future land use and having more specific zoning conversations in the future, I can go back to this and say, oh, well, everyone in the Webster neighborhood said they wanted this. And so we need to make sure that that's allowed in their neighborhood.
So then if you have it collected via the naming of the street, is that gonna be too difficult to sort, or is that sorting as?
No, I think that's fine. I think if that's where you guys wanna go, I totally am in favor of
Yeah.
that.
Except Forest Ave is really long. That's not gonna be enough. Same with Bennick or
Yeah.
College Ave, Park Street, Route 2. I live on Route 2. And then what happens?
It's true.
Well, Bennick's not that long in Orono,
No.
right? It's center town to Old Town,
There's-
right? It goes all the way to Milo, but
There were two questions.
The other thing is, people new to town aren't gonna know the basin or off of Main Street covers a huge area.
Yeah.
And then Tough End, like, that doesn't seem like a name we wanna reinforce. I don't,
What do you mean?
we need to get rid of these.
Yeah. I didn't know I lived in the basin until I'd lived in the basin for like 3 years. And then somebody said that and I was like, "Ew, we're in the basin? Not really where I wanna be.
I think street name gets us closest to what we're accomplishing. And again, this is just for the hard copy. We have more specific data from the digital version, which I'm hoping that most people will do.
So two questions.
Mhm.
If you're doing the online, can you skip the pin drop?
No,
You cannot skip the pin.
no, if you say that you live here, it's a
Okay,
required.
what are
question.
their instructions going to be about where to drop the pin? Are they assuming that I have to drop it on my house?
I
are they
think I
assuming
said
that-
general vicinity of your neighborhood.
General vicinity of where you live,
Yeah.
okay.
Maybe,
Then
maybe
what's
put
the-
it like on your street. Maybe might be easier if we're asking people who do it in person to write their street name, because really the only street name that doesn't give you a general neighborhood is Forest. Right?
And
For the
if you live
most
on a
part.
street with 3 houses on it, you may not want to answer that question.
Well, can we make it optional then? Can we say like optional, like street number, house number with street name? Like, 'cause if someone gives us their street number and their street name, then that's awesome. And if they only give us a street name, that's a little less awesome, but still good.
Yeah.
And if they don't feel comfortable giving any of them because they're the only house on the street, then they
You
can
could
leave it
just
off.
say, or neighborhood, what's your street address or neighborhood?
Yeah.
We're gonna get coordinates of where they drop the pin.
Right.
And if their instruction is just the general neighborhood of where you live, that's gonna be good enough. I think.
Yeah, I think it seems like the main question is just how do we phrase this paper copy?
Yeah.
What is your street name or street address or neighborhood?
Street name, because address has got a number.
And give them at least on the hard copy, give them the ability to say prefer not to answer.
what are we anticipating the proportion of paper surveys is gonna be?
It's typically quite small and it's
Yeah.
typically only the oldest residents.
Which means if they do specify a neighborhood, I mean, they'll know how to specify that.
Yeah, they would know.
Yes, I will.
Cause you wanna aggregate this by neighborhood, right? Don't we wanna look at it by neighborhood?
It depends how they come in.
It's helpful to know.
But like a street is not gonna, okay, I've got 100 streets. It's not telling me anything. Like I'd have to really drill into that to kind of see a pattern.
We can
If I've
code
got
them on the
these-
back end.
Hmm?
You can code that all on the back end though.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But then you're like, okay, so Main Street is which neighborhood? Right? Which street is Forest? Which neighborhood's Forest? Like where you're gonna see the patterns is the neighborhoods.
What if
That's
we
where you're
might,
gonna see the patterns.
wonder if we might just need to resign ourselves to a certain ambiguity with the paper copies, knowing that most of our data will be more specific and helpful.
I think we're gonna wanna aggregate this by those neighborhoods.
Yeah, we can, and to your point, we can quite easily do that on the back end. The website has the ability to code it.
But not if we only know the street, because the streets do not align with the neighborhood.
Well, it's only the paper copy that would say that.
No, but if you're asking in the online, oh, you're saying with the, we're doing the dots online still, we're
Yeah.
not gonna do streets, okay.
Yeah.
And if it's like 10 paper copies, who cares?
Yeah, it's typically, my experience is it's between like 5 to 7%. It is not a huge amount of people that do paper.
How many people do you get
People won't mind, but
in
yeah.
answering these surveys
Usually.
usually?
Okay, so this is a great question. My general goal is usually 10% of a community. So if the population is 11,000,
That's way high.
that's way high. That's my goal. That's my stretch
We'll
goal.
stand up a plot for you.
It's typically more like around 5%. It's, yeah, 5 to 10%, and I would be super happy with 10%.
500 people, 500 people.
You think?
Have you ever gotten 10%?
Look at the,
Put Laura Mitchell on it.
Okay, I just got it, I got 10%.
Oh, okay.
Laura Mitchell,
We had it open.
Where is the
trade?
trade?
And a half, so 2 weeks longer.
you wanna make Laura mad? No?
About the same as this one. Their committee was all retired people and they did a lot of work, just literally going door to door. So I can't take a lot of credit for that one. We did a lot of online engagement, but it was them going like 2 nursing homes and 2 places.
It's not 500, it's 1,500, because we're going with the students.
So that's how they got to 10%.
Yeah, and it was actually more than 10%. It was like 13%. It was a huge amount.
Okay.
That's a community of 2,000 people. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, that was my next question. Yeah, okay. Students don't know.
All right, I only had two more things. Last one, the second to last one was, I assume, but just to check, will this be responsive on a mobile device?
Yes, yep.
And then the other one was more general, because I think the questions are framed about like, why do I like living here? Do we want to also kind of do we want to kind of invoke like, why would someone want to live in Orono? Was it really because I think the earlier questions were like, why do you live here or something like that?
Is there a question, so how retailers usually get to that is, would you recommend this to a friend, right? Because that's the easiest way to gauge that without getting too much in the weeds. Like, would you recommend somebody you know move to Orono? Or do business in Orono, or kind of what have you? Might be broad enough to get to that point without coming out and saying.
I think what Eric's question to this is nuance. Right, like that idea of, when people are putting into words, versus a binary.
There's some combination there. I mean, what you just said, would you recommend Orono, living in Orono to a friend? Why or why not? And then it's sort of an open-ended thing. I mean, it's harder for us to code data around, but. But might give us a different sense, as you were describing, of what actually people think matters in town more broadly in a way that maybe the rest of the survey might not otherwise capture.
It was the first page. It says, how important are the following attributes to making Orono a place where you will want to live during the next 10 to 20 years? And so that 10 to 20 years,
Is that too long for you?
Well, I mean, what if I'm gonna,
Leave for three.
but what if I might wanna be here for 10 years, but
What if you're gonna croak in like, you know,
if I'm gonna die?
5?
Like what happens, what if I'm here in 21 years? Well, how about just like in the future? I don't know why we're putting numbers on it, but like, will want to, like, would want to move here or continue living here, something like that, maybe?
Perfect.
I'm on board with your lack of commitment. I really love it.
You would want to live, or where you will continue to live? Can you, yeah,
What's the purpose of this question?
Oh, there we go. We're
Again,
right back.
trying to access
Interesting.
priorities, like what has drawn people here? So we've talked a lot through this process about the schools, attractive natural setting, you know, frankly, a little bit of like access to the university or access to the greater Bangor region. I want to understand what drew people here. So I think it is kind of past tense to an extent, like what drew you here in the past. Happy to make it more open-ended if that's what folks are leaning towards.
Or what about to making Orono a desirable place to live?
That
So we're
make sense.
changing this whole question from you to others
Or one.
or someone, which could be
Most
you or
people
someone else.
insert the you, they're let themselves into that.
We got
You think-
just making
How
more of
important is
this.
that? I'm making more. An attractive place to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, generally it's all about me, so that's how I'm gonna answer it.
So everybody.
People can do whatever they want.
Or to making Orono a place you wanna live.
Just put your name in there. Put a little picture. You don't know this. Yeah. That would be awesome.
That's a great idea.
That was the last comment, I guess.
On the, on page 2, the bottom question about in terms of outdoor recreational amenities, can we add a box to check off around evening access?
Evening access?
Say more about what you mean.
Like
Talking
after
about
hours.
tango class again?
Well, it's not even evening at 4 PM when it gets dark. Do we need some lighting of some
Field.
outdoor recreation?
That was subtle, Laura, very subtle.
Nighttime.
Yes.
We ski with our headlamp.
Bill, I thought I heard you. Did you have something to add?
I just said that was very subtle. Yeah.
Specialty and subtlety.
You could do that as an other if that's your, you know.
Write-in campaign.
Well, that's how I'm gonna get people to fill it out.
There you go. Write-in campaign, I love it.
I mean, if you get like 30 people to write in that other.
And then rank it.
Appropriate conversation.
I think that this is valid because I think that there are, like, when I think about what kids do after school and how they spend their time and the ebb and flow of that as the seasons change. And, you know, the idea that in, you know, this part of the world, if you have a kid who wants to be active after 3:30 in a certain time of year, there have got to be lights out somewhere, right? And I don't mean to be, you know, I don't mean to give the impression I'm hitching this wagon to, you know, Laura's tractor, but I do think that having evening opportunities available for kids outside is a relevant question.
He says like
Maybe that's
broad,
a question of its own, though. We talked about community centers for
Yeah.
teens in the past.
what if
It's
you
on there
talked
somewhere,
about
isn't it?
like the broadness of access, right? Whether that's access in like nights and weekends or lighting for fields at night, right? Like. There's gotta be a way to like, add that in there that's not targeted to one specific issue, but it does bring home like, when can you access these things, right? You talk about nighttime, you talk about does something get locked up, right? Like I don't know. Timeliness of access? No?
Well, or what about evening access to outdoor recreation? Which could be, I mean, it's somewhat ambiguous, right? And that it doesn't specify lighting, but I think that it,
Right?
It's the hockey rink lit up, and nothing else is. The tennis courts aren't lit up. The playgrounds are closed.
I
There you
like,
go.
I like the idea of sort of doing a similar what would improve your access to outdoor recreational amenities, but leaving it more open-ended for this second question. And then people can sort of fill in what they think. Cause that one, I think, could be much more open-ended, could, yeah, allow people to kind of determine what access looks like to them.
That could bring up accessibility issues like wheelchair accessibility. That might be the thing that people hear when they think access.
Opportunities.
And I will specify on this one thing. But I think that is what we would have control over.
Yes.
And what about that idea of like community centers or opportunities for kids?
After school care.
Maybe don't call it care though.
What's,
Like teens need care, but there's something a little bit more mature about
it's like
community.
youth
center.
recreation opportunities or something.
Yeah, so we have a services for senior citizens here, and when considering Orono's existing community services, I think that could be a good place for, how have we been wording it?
For youth as well.
Youth activities, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
You said evening, I was thinking also like I do a lot of amateur astronomy and I would love to see less light pollution, but that it's like too specific.
Turn off your
Stay away
lights.
from Laura.
Well,
I
those
wanted
are
to
always,
throw something in there too, if I.
There
This
are
is
ways-
Lauren from the plant shop. I am watching, but multitasking mom life today.
And other ways, anyway, this is not the forum for to get into light pollution mitigation, but
I heard you say something, but I didn't catch it in the room. Can you repeat yourself?
Yes. Are you talking to me, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to make sure. I said I am on Zoom tonight with my kids, so I apologize, but I just wanted to chime in about a few things that have come up for my plant shop is I do a lot of workshops and have people in the shop creating things like we have a pottery wheel now and just hands-on things. It is creating, I have 3 kids myself, but it is creating an after-school hangout on its own, just being right there where everyone walks by. I feel like people have been calling it a third home. It's just really, that's what is so valuable about my business. And I just keep hearing so many things that you guys say that make me want to just say that I want to know, I guess, how I can help with that personally, just as I know there's some laws and things I need to talk to Isabella some more, but I have mentioned this with my landlord and with Mitch Stone before about having more programs and workshops, but I would like to be a place that offers that. And we do a lot of workshops with kids in the summer where we go on nature walks and work in the community garden. And then would be in my plant shop, hands-on learning, anything about gardening, art, music. I have a lot of employees that are students that would love to be more involved and their friends come in and things like that. So I would love to be able to make money doing that rather than just be a hangout for everyone. So I think that that is just wanted to throw it out there while I had the opportunity that it is needed and I'm seeing that people are looking for it and I'm giving them that, but I'm not structuring it the right way because it's usually, you know, people popping in and it's always different people. And now it's my kids' friends and their parents and stuff. So I want to expand it however I can to help the town because I think it's a wonderful thing to have and my kids benefit from it too.
I think, just to kind of riff off of that a little bit, I think that there is frequently going to be conversations about sort of a lack of third spaces. You called it like third home, but third spaces is sort of a planning term, where it's not your house, it's not your job, but it's like the place that you hang out and meet
And I
people
think-
and meet friends.
I think that's the
And
number
I
one thing. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, I think we'll probably hear that as sort of an opportunity. Even if that is like a public, you know, a private business or a public community center or some sort of place.
So maybe we want to say like after school programs or activities, right? Because
Absolutely.
like Herman has an after school program on site, right? But then she's talking about an after school activity, right? And you get also like the Y has after school activities and on campus as well, right? So
Yes. So mine would more, just to give you clarification, some of you might not know my background, but I was a teacher for a lot of years. And then I became a stay-at-home parent 10 years ago and built this business as I was doing it. So I became a master gardener. So I like to teach about gardening. So it is very much like my passion, and I homeschooled for a while too. And my employees are all very educated in either something that involves gardening, sustainability, agriculture. We do workshops on pottery and things. So yeah, I would want to offer educational opportunities and also a social space, community. People need to connect more with each other in nature. I don't even have a TV in my house. I'm so passionate about it. So I like sharing that with people, and I think that resonates a lot with the Orono community, and that's why I've felt at home here for so long.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that will keep coming up. We can ask about it specifically here, but just to note for you all, that's probably something that will keep coming up and likely will need to be addressed in the form of potentially removing barriers for private development as well.
It's like on page 1, there's a specific question about outdoor recreational activities. And is it maybe adding a thing about kind of those? I don't know how, people aren't gonna understand what a third, I know what you mean, but like, yeah, it's not a survey term. But just ask that, like, if there's a way to ask about that.
Yeah, Starbucks tried to make it a thing a few years ago. I don't know if.
Starbucks, yeah, no one's gonna.
They made that their ad campaign, like make Starbucks your third place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this pertains, but I guess I'm problem solving. So I'll just throw it out there. If as of now, it's okay for me to have less than 25 people with the, the town code and the fire marshal and the people I've met with have given me restrictions basically, and my landlord, to have educational workshops and things like that. It's because of the size and things like that. And also I haven't looked into the children's thing. I know there needs to be either private school but there's licensing, but I think there's ways around this, but I didn't know if there's anything that is, stopping that from being able, like if this could be included in this section. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I was going to say when I read it through.
Any other comments or questions on the survey? Any edits that you would like me to make?
I've got something right off the wall. When I first came on here, one thing I had hoped to talk about was solar panels on the municipal buildings. I know it's an expensive proposition up front, but I do think the power usage in the schools and this office is enough to offset it over time. And I know it's been talked about several times before, but there's no kind of, we want to have it done in 5 years or whatever. But I don't see on this survey it's completely different from any questions we're asking here.
I think I ended up going to, this is on the second to last page, page 6. There's questions around ranking the top 3 strategies that would improve quality of life. One of those is expanding environmental sustainability efforts. I think just based on the feedback that we've gotten so far to Penobscot Climate Action, that might also end up being, if not in the top 3 of our priorities, a fairly high priority. That the regional climate action plan provides a lot of strategies about including municipal solar. And I think will have to be something that we address in this plan in some way. If that's not solar specifically, just broader environmental sustainability efforts.
Just wondering, how much longer are we intending to go with this meeting? I'm not pushing for us to close. I'm just, I'm really not.
So I'm good, in terms of the survey. I do have a question. We had talked last time about, you had asked actually if I had cross-referenced our schedule with, Jewish holidays. The one conflict would be our next regularly scheduled meeting. I want to just bring up for your attention, that was just going to be a workshop to review the materials for our open houses that would be taking place the week after, or in about the week after. I am wondering if you feel that you need to have that meeting, or if I can just run with the materials and go ahead.
I think you can run with the materials.
Agree.
Okay, so we can go ahead and cancel.
Cancel that one.
I will get you information with the final dates, times, and locations of our community open house events. Really, I'll be sort of facilitating all of that, but it would be great to get all of you there just to help with some of the small group conversations and things like that.
Are you good now with the survey to go live?
And I think I've got everyone's blessing. I'll make the edits and I will be ready to go live on Monday, and I'll send you a link to the full website once available. You can share it with your peers.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing. It's a lot of work.
We'll go live on Monday. Right, good.
That's all from me.
I don't have anything.
And I don't believe, let me just make sure there's nobody online for public comment.
No.
I don't believe so. So with that,
Nobody there? Okay.
Nope.
I need you to take you to work with me. You can kill a meeting. I don't like that. I can use you every day.
great.
And
Thank you,
last
everyone.
motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Say we're adjourned. Thank you very much,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you.
See ya.
I love your shirt. Don't mill and knock it till you try it.
Oh, thanks.
Is that available at